Never explain yourself. Silence is the highest form of confidence. Stoicism. There was a period in my life when I explained myself far too much. Not because I was lying, not because I was wrong, but because I genuinely wanted to be understood. I remember nights sitting alone in a dark room, staring at the glow of my phone, deleting and rewriting the same message, adjusting every sentence, weighing every word, hoping that if I explained myself clearly enough, softly enough, honestly enough, the other person would finally understand what I was thinking, what I was feeling. I didn't want to win an argument. I just wanted to be seen fairly. But the more I explained, the more exhausted I became. Not tired from debating, but tired from the feeling that I had to prove I deserved to be heard. There was a very quiet sadness in those moments. Not loud, not dramatic, no tears, just the sense that my dignity was slowly being worn down, piece by piece, by my own attempts to be kind and reasonable. I don't blame myself for that. When you care, you want to clarify. When you value a relationship, you want to repair it. When you still believe, you keep explaining. But there are moments when the exhaustion doesn't come from being misunderstood. It comes from trying to speak to people who decided not to listen from the very beginning. And the most painful part is that we usually realize this only after we've already said too much. Have you ever been there? Have you ever sent a long message, honest and carefully written, only to receive nothing but seen, no reply, no questions, no sign that what you shared meant anything to them? Have you ever been misunderstood at work? Accused of intentions you never had, standing there explaining yourself while the look in the other person's eyes had already turned cold? Have you ever been labeled too difficult, too sensitive, too serious in a relationship, and suddenly found yourself explaining your entire character, as if you needed permission just to be who you are? At first, you think it's them, but slowly, very slowly, you realize it's us. We are the ones seeking validation in places where respect no longer exists. There was a very small, very quiet moment when something inside me began to crack. Not a big argument, not a dramatic ending. Just one evening, after I had finished explaining, said everything I could say, laid down all the sincerity I had, and received silence in return. In that moment, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even deeply sad. I was just tired. A deep, still kind of tired. And within that exhaustion, a thought passed through me, gentle but clear. Maybe the problem wasn't that I hadn't explained well enough. Maybe I was speaking to the wrong person. Not because I was wrong, but because I was trying to convince someone who no longer needed to understand me. That thought didn't make me strong right away. It simply made me stop. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't explain anymore. I went silent, not as a strategy, but as a natural response from someone who had run out of energy to defend themselves with words. Pause for a moment. Breathe in gently, and let everything settle. If you're listening to this, you may be carrying a similar kind of exhaustion. Not because life is hard, but because you've been constantly proving you're not as bad as people think, not as wrong as they say, not as careless as they label you. Allow yourself to stop here with me. Nothing to fix, nothing to react to. Just breathe, and let silence touch you lightly, like a temporary shelter. It was in that pause that I began to understand something deeply important. Not through a quote, not through a grand philosophical lesson, just a very human realization that sometimes silence is not giving up. Silence is the moment you stop hurting yourself by trying to be understood in places where respect no longer lives. This is where Stoicism quietly begins. Not loudly, not dogmatically, not through force, but through honesty with yourself. When you stop explaining, not because you are arrogant, but because you feel something profound, your value does not need to be translated for everyone. And from that moment, a different journey opens. A journey of learning how to stand firm in silence, and reclaim the confidence that was slowly eroded by too many words. Part 2. Shared realization. After staying silent long enough, I began to realize something crucial, something no one had ever said to me directly, and something I had never clearly named myself. We often think confidence means being understood, agreed with, validated. But the longer I lived, the more times I experienced explanations that led nowhere, the clearer it became that real confidence has nothing to do with being understood. It has everything to do with whether you can still stand upright with yourself. Confidence is not the feeling of applause. It's the inner state where you no longer need anyone's permission to trust your own worth. It's alignment between your thoughts, your actions, and your conscience. When those three are aligned, the urge to prove yourself disappears. We often confuse loud confidence with quiet confidence. Loud confidence needs an audience. It needs feedback, agreement, visibility. It talks a lot, explains a lot, reacts quickly, and fears being misunderstood. Quiet confidence is different. It doesn't need to win. It doesn't need defending. It doesn't need to rewrite its story inside someone else's mind. It moves slowly. It speaks less. And when silence is needed, it becomes silent naturally. People with quiet confidence are not silent because they have nothing to say, but because they know some things don't need to be said to be true. When you are truly grounded inside, agreement from others is no longer the condition for feeling okay. This is where Stoicism enters, not as a distant philosophy, but as a very practical way of seeing life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he could not control the thoughts, words, or judgments of others. The only thing within his control was his response. It sounds simple, but if you look closely at moments when we over-explain, you'll see we are trying to control something that was never ours to control. You cannot dictate how someone interprets your message. You cannot force them to understand your intention. The more you try to correct your image in their mind, the more control you lose over your own inner state. Epictetus took this further by clearly separating what is within our control and what is not. Your words are yours. Your intentions are yours. But how others interpret them is not. When you keep texting explanations, writing long clarifications, defending your reputation against misunderstandings, you are placing your peace in someone else's hands. You are saying, often unconsciously, that your emotional stability depends on their response. And in that moment, you step away from self-mastery and into the position of someone waiting to be judged. Look at everyday life. A message left unanswered, an explanation ignored, a statement misunderstood at work. Our instinct is familiar. Send another message. Explain more carefully. Defend yourself. Fear that silence will make you look wrong. Stoics see this differently. They understand that what others think is not the measure of your value. When you trade peace for approval, you gamble with something priceless for something that is never guaranteed. The most dangerous part of explaining is not whether others understand, but the psychological trap behind it. We explain because we fear being misunderstood. We fear misjudgment. We fear losing connection. We fear abandonment. These fears are human and real, but each time you over-explain, you hand over the authority of your peace to someone else. You hire them to decide whether you deserve calm, and that is an unfair contract, because you are always the one paying the price. Explaining, in this sense, is outsourcing peace. It's asking the outside world to hold something only you can truly keep. But no one can hold it for long. People change. They misunderstand. They leave. And when they do, you collapse not because they left, but because too much of you was placed in their hands. Stoicism doesn't deny emotion. It simply understands where suffering comes from. Suffering doesn't arise from being misunderstood. It arises from believing you need to be understood to have value. The moment of change for me was simple. No bright light. No dramatic declaration. Just one day, standing at the edge of explaining once again, I stopped. And in that pause, I felt something strange, as if my spine straightened slightly. I was no longer bending to be understood. I stood still and felt my inner axis return to its place. The moment I stopped explaining, I felt my spine return. Not pride, a return. From that moment on, I understood that silence is not coldness. Silence is not punishment. Silence is a deep, grounded form of confidence. Confidence without sound. When you know who you are, know you've lived according to your values, the need to convince disappears. Silence is not emptiness. It's solid ground. And when you stand on that ground, you don't need explanations to exist. You simply continue living truthfully and let silence say what words no longer can. Part 3. Gentle, Stoic tools. Once you reach the truth that confidence comes not from being understood but from standing firmly with yourself, a quiet question naturally arises. How do you live with that silence? How do you apply it in a life full of friction? Stoicism doesn't give rigid techniques, because life doesn't operate by formulas. Instead, it offers very human moments. Moments you recognize when they appear again, so you know where to stand. I want to share 3 such moments, not to teach, but to remind you of experiences you may already know, and how silence can become a steady companion. The first moment appears when you are misunderstood or ghosted, left behind in someone else's silence. Perhaps you sent a message filled with sincerity and received no response. Perhaps you explained something at work, only to find the story retold behind your back in a completely different way. Our instinct is to clarify, to add more words, to explain again. Instead of that, try something simple that once changed how I saw relationships entirely. I stayed silent for 72 hours. Not to punish, not to appear superior, but to observe. During those 3 days, I didn't text again. I didn't check in. I didn't correct the story. I watched. I watched who reached out, who asked questions, who continued to treat me with respect. And I watched who disappeared when I stopped explaining. What I learned in those quiet days was deeper than any promise. Behavior always speaks more truthfully than words. Those who truly care don't need long paragraphs to recognize your worth. Those who respect you will ask, listen, and try to understand. Those who are used to receiving, controlling, and feeding on your explanations leave when that energy stops. Stoics express this simply. Patterns are louder than promises. Repeated behavior is more reliable than beautiful words. When you stop explaining and begin observing, you lose nothing. You simply stop deceiving yourself. And in that quiet observation, many truths step into the light on their own. The second moment comes when you decide to leave, without turning your departure into a performance. Many believe leaving quietly is weakness. Stoics see it differently. Leaving in silence requires strength, because it demands that you release the need to prove you are right. I've walked away from relationships and situations where respect was gone. I didn't unfollow in anger. I didn't cut contact impulsively. I didn't send an emotional final message hoping they would finally understand. I stepped back. Then, another step. Slowly, quietly. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of the pain of leaving comes not from losing someone, but from the mental scenarios about how we will be judged. When you leave quietly, you cut off those imagined narratives. You deny them a stage. You stop feeding them with reaction. Detachment, in this sense, is not coldness. It is self-respect in action. It's saying to yourself, I don't need to destroy my inner calm just to explain myself to someone who no longer values my presence. Quiet withdrawal does not diminish you. It preserves you. The third moment comes when you face a common illusion, the belief that you need one final conversation for closure. Many believe that one more meeting, one last explanation, one final question will close the chapter. In reality, those conversations rarely bring peace. They reopen wounds. They invite more explaining, more hoping, more disappointment. Stoics don't deny the desire for closure. They simply ask a clear question. Who does closure come from? If your peace depends on whether someone else speaks kindly, you have already given your power away. I once did something very simple and very powerful. I wrote a letter. I wrote everything I wanted to say, every injustice I felt, every unanswered question. I wrote as if they would read it, and I didn't send it. I read it back to myself. Then I folded it away. That letter didn't change anyone else. It changed me. I realized closure is not a dialogue. It's permission granted from within. The moment you say, I don't need more information to move forward. I've seen enough. I've understood enough. And I choose to close this loop, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. When you allow yourself to close in silence, you stop chasing answers that never come. You stop asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. And in that silence, a new space opens, where old memories no longer drag you backward each time they surface. Silence stops being frightening emptiness. It becomes a door closing gently, so you no longer stand waiting for someone to return and explain what they chose long ago. Pause for a moment. Breathe in gently and let everything settle. If you've come this far, you may already feel your inner rhythm slowing. Not because problems disappeared, but because you're no longer charging into them with old reflexes. This silence is not avoidance. It is a quiet intelligence, a way of protecting your energy without building noisy defenses. And from this stillness, the final part of the journey unfolds, where silence not only helps you stand firm, but teaches you how to forgive yourself and recover the deepest peace you may have lost along the way. Part 4. Stillness and self-forgiveness. When you've walked far enough on the path of silence, something subtle happens. You begin to feel yourself returning, not to a place outside, but to yourself, to your natural breath, to the feeling that you no longer need to prove, defend, or explain. Silence becomes less like an empty space and more like a home, a place where you can lay down roles you've held too tightly, a place where you don't need to be right, understood, or accepted to feel whole. Perhaps for the first time in years, you realize this silence is not lonely. It's warm. It's calm, like a late evening with the lights turned off, one soft glow remaining, permission to breathe more slowly. No one watching, no one judging, no one demanding. You don't need to explain why you left. You don't need to justify why you were right. You don't need to defend your story to anyone. You simply exist. And in that presence, something important happens. Your nervous system begins to rest. Your body drops its guard. Your mind stops preparing for the next conversation. You are no longer poised to react. You sit within yourself and allow silence to hold you gently. Returning to silence is also returning to the truth that you don't need to live in constant defense. Many of us have grown used to being ready to explain at any moment, as if misunderstanding were inevitable. When you allow yourself to be silent, you are telling yourself something kind. I don't need to defend myself to exist. I don't need to prove my value. I don't need to say everything to be respected. Respect begins inside. Silence is simply how it is protected. And as you sit there long enough, another feeling arises naturally. The need to forgive, not others first, but yourself. Forgiving yourself for chasing, for begging for attention, for explaining too much, hoping too much. Not to deny what happened, but to see it with gentler eyes. You didn't do those things because you were weak, because you placed your heart where you thought it was safe. Many people judge themselves harshly for having chased, begged, or explained, as if those acts prove a lack of worth. The truth is simpler. Those actions came from a very human desire to connect, to be understood, to be loved. There is nothing shameful in having tried. What hurts is refusing to release the old version of yourself, continuing to judge yourself by standards imposed by a harsh world. Stoicism doesn't teach coldness toward the self. It teaches fairness. And fairness here means acknowledging that you did the best you could with what you knew then. Say to yourself, slowly and honestly, I explained because I still had hope. I chased because I didn't yet know how to let go. I begged because I feared losing connection. And I don't need to punish myself for that anymore. When you can say this, even silently, a heavy burden lifts. You stop carrying old shame into the present. You move forward, lighter, wiser, without becoming bitter. From that forgiveness, a quiet stoic anchor forms inside you. You stop trying to control others and return to controlling what is truly yours. You can't control who understands you, who remembers you, or what they say when you're gone. But you can control how you respond, how you hold your dignity, how you protect your peace. Inner control doesn't mean forcing emotions away. It means not allowing emotions to pull you out of yourself. When you choose silence over explanation, you are not choosing isolation. You are choosing dignity. When you walk away quietly instead of arguing, you are not choosing defeat. You are choosing peace. In Stoic philosophy, peace is placed above connection. Not because connection doesn't matter, but because no connection can survive if it requires you to abandon yourself. A relationship only has meaning when it doesn't ask you to bend your values just to remain. And gradually, you begin to live differently. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You react more slowly, but each response comes from stability, not fear. You stop correcting your image in other people's minds and focus on living in alignment with what you believe. No announcements, no explanations. Your life becomes the answer. Pause for a moment. Breathe in gently and let everything settle. Feel where your body rests. Notice the breath moving in and out. No need to change it. No need to guide it. Just be here. In this moment, no one demands that you become someone else. No one needs you to say more. This silence is enough. It holds you like a light hand on your shoulder, reminding you that you are safe without proving anything. If there is one thing to carry with you after this video ends, let it be simple. My silence is my confidence. Not because you are above others, but because you have stopped seeking validation outside. I don't explain myself anymore. I live my values. You don't need to announce this to the world. You only need to live it, quietly, in small daily choices. When to speak, you speak. When to remain silent, you remain silent. Not out of fear, not out of pride, but because you know where your peace lives. Let the rest of this evening move slowly. No need to think further. No need to extract a lesson. Simply allow silence to stay with you a little longer, like an ending without noise or urgency. And as you drift toward sleep, if a quiet whisper rises within you, let it be this: I don't need to explain to have value. I am enough. And in that enoughness, I am allowed to be at peace.